The NATO alliance is staging a nuclear exercise in the skies over Western Europe starting today. The training exercise, called Steadfast Noon, comes as tensions between the West and Russia continue to escalate following Moscow's nuclear threats in Ukraine. Our correspondent, Alex Cadier, joins us now from NATO headquarters in Brussels. Alex, good day to you. Is this exercise linked to the conflict in Ukraine?
Well, NATO are very clear. They say this is in no way linked to any world events. Last week at the NATO Defence Ministers meeting, the General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg also making it clear that this was a scheduled exercise. It was scheduled long before the invasion of Ukraine, and it happens every year. But it is fair to wonder if it's something that will be in any way seen as linked or seen as an escalation by Moscow when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine. It's certainly a very high-profile, highly secretive exercise. We've been trying to find out more details for you about what kind of aircraft are taking place or are taking part, or which countries are taking part. So far, we know that the United States is sending long-range B-52 bombers from Mino Air Force Base in North Dakota. These are called super fortresses, these vast bombing aircraft. The UK also sending some of its aircraft. Now, the exercise is also hosted here in Belgium, not too far from here, about an hour and a half outside of Brussels, and that also will indicate that some Belgian Air Force will most likely be involved. But that's 60 aircraft from 14 different air forces. That includes fighter jets, bombers and tankers, and it's all a nuclear exercise. Luckily, possibly for some of us here in Brussels, no live ammunition will be used. There will be no live fire in this exercise, and as NATO said, it is very much part of a routine, scheduled, planned exercise and has no link to Russia. It's just a way to make sure that NATO's nuclear deterrent stays fully up to date.
As routine as it is, one imagines that it'll take into cognizance the current environment. But looking at the West's support for Ukraine, what more can we expect to hear from NATO this time round?
Well, NATO is very much keen on supporting Ukraine. They've reiterated that commitment several times. And as you can imagine, as we saw from the reports this morning of drones bombing in Kyiv this morning, air defense will be at the very heart of the priority for NATO in supporting Ukraine. We know that the Germans have committed 4 air defense systems to Ukraine and are committed to give them. The Spanish, the French and the Americans have all committed to provide more air defense systems. But it's not just that. NATO allies are providing all sorts of support. The Canadians, as you would imagine, with some expertise in cold weather, are providing winter gear for the Ukrainian military over the next few months. So NATO is very much doubling down on its support. And it comes after what NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said was the biggest escalation since the start of the war. By that, he means the nuclear threats by Vladimir Putin's regime in Moscow, the mass mobilization of hundreds of thousands of Russian men joining the war, and also the bombing raids on civilian infrastructure that we've seen in the last few weeks. So looking forward, you can expect to see more equipment, more support from NATO, and broadly perhaps more sanctions from the West. But certainly today, a big show of force with this nuclear exercise, routine though it may be, a big show of force to make sure NATO is seen around the world as being strong and united.
Alex Cadier is from the NATO headquarters in Brussels, giving us that update on that NATO exercise.